You are eager to move and feel like an athlete again, but you're afraid to because you've been given misinformation, outdated recommendations, flat out lies, all the things that we like to call the nope.
In this series, we will debunk the nope, transform it into hope, allowing you to reclaim your birthright of healthy and athletic.
Don't forget to subscribe and share so that you and your friends are not missing out on any of this content. We want you to become a lifelong athlete. Let's get to it. Brandy's coming in at a blistering pace with today's nope. Brandy, what's today's nope?
I've been told that running is bad for my knees.
How many of you have heard this running is bad for your knees? Where does this come from? What is this nope? Why is it delivered? The hope is that running is not bad for your knees. Running is actually good for your knees when done at an appropriate volume and intensity. That nope comes from outdated biomechanical research. In today's video, we're pulling a clip from a previous webinar where you're gonna learn the research and the new science as to why running is not bad for your knees, but why it's great for your knees.
Running's bad for your knees, but is it really? Where does this come from? Well, the idea comes from that cartilage degeneration is occurring because of this impact, and that the joint space is actually narrowing. So between your tibia, between your femur, this is becoming less and less because of the repetitive impact, and that's going to create osteoarthritis. You're going to be in pain, and you're going to need a knee replacement if you keep on running. We've all heard it, or variation of that story. What's the updated framework from modern science show? And I will loosely say modern because the first study that we're going to look at actually comes from the 80s. And it was Teriyama et al. This was done in Japan. They looked at joint space of the human knee and hip under a static load. Note that this was a cadaver's knee. So this was a person that graciously and willingly donated their body to science after they had passed. And what they did is they took the femur, they took the tibia, and they tried to force it together. They used this machine that created 2 times body weight, pushing the femur into the tibia. And guess what they found? Under this load, these spaces stayed 0.2 to 0.6 millimeters apart. They were not able to get these joints to rub together. How many times have we heard you're bone on bone? Your joints are rubbing together. And if you keep doing this, they're gonna keep rubbing together and they're gonna wear out. Well, for that to be true, we actually need to be bone on bone. And here's the thing, bone on bone doesn't exist. This study shows us that you can't force these things together. And there's been no study showing that you can do that. And no, this was in a cadaver's knee. When we look at a dynamic system of a living human being, what we see is that there's even less likelihood that our joints can truly rub together. It's amazing. We have forces, we have synovial fluid that has alike charges. And what do alike charges do? They repel each other. Opposites attract, and the similar charges repel each other. So in a human system, our joints, they don't rub together. They're not bone on bone. Can cartilage degenerate? Yes, it can. Can that create symptoms and inflammation? Yes, it can. But is it due to bones rubbing on each other? No. So the next question then, well, does running cause cartilage degeneration? And that's what these next studies are going to start to look at. This was a systematic review done in 2011. What's the effect of physical activity on the knee joint? Systematic review. Systematic review, they pool a bunch of studies together to increase the power and see what patterns are emerging from the research that's been done on this subject. And then how do we guide the future research to get more of the answers that we are looking for? So what they found in this review is that when people were completing physical activity, at no point did it increase the narrowing of their joint space. Again, physical activity did not increase the narrowing of their joint space. But what about the cartilage? What did it do for the cartilage? Well, people that were physically active, whether it was strength training, whether it was low impact, whether it was running, name the activity, people that were active, they found an increase in knee cartilage volume, meaning that this cartilage didn't degenerate, it actually became more robust, more resilient, and they became more adaptable. And here's the kicker. They found this on MRI. They found cartilage defects decrease, cartilage volume increase, and they found that they actually had a decreased risk of knee osteoarthritis. the physical activity people that were doing the activities, that were doing the things, had decreased risk of osteoarthritis. Let's keep going. Next study. Effects of exercise on patellar cartilage in women with mild knee OA. I want to point out this study was in 2015. This group of women were postmenopausal and they did high impact activity. This was very specific, high impact activity. What they found is that high impact and intense exercise created a favorable effect on cartilage, on the knee cartilage. High impact, high intensity improved the cartilage in postmenopausal women. Incredible, incredible research. This other thing we want to look at is a lot of people will say, well, my knees are misaligned. I'm bow-legged or I'm knock-kneed. I'm misaligned, so it means that my medial or my lateral compartment is going to have more knee osteoarthritis than the other side. And this research looked at that, and this was done in 2013. And they found that whether they had a neutral alignment in the knee or whether they had a misaligned knee, it didn't matter. High physical activity did not increase the risk of osteoarthritis in a male-aligned group. So what we're doing is we're updating the framework, and really we're getting rid of excuses to say that we can't go and do this activity, because guess what? What it's showing us is that this stuff is actually helpful for our knees. All right, last study we're going to look at here, this looked at recreational runners against competitive runners and people that were sedentary. And what they found is that the recreational runners had less rates of osteoarthritis compared to the sedentary group. So let me pose this question. If running was bad for your knees, wouldn't the recreational running group have higher rates of knee osteoarthritis, higher levels of dysfunction, higher levels of pain compared to the sedentary group? And the answer would be, yeah, that would be true. And we're not seeing that, because what we have to understand about knee osteoarthritis is that physical activity is helpful for that. We have to understand that knee osteoarthritis isn't caused by impact. It's not caused by physical activity. These things are actually helpful for it. We're seeing increase in cartilage volume. We're seeing decreased risk of knee OA. We're seeing improved function, less disability. We're seeing that the sedentary groups actually have higher levels of this. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that we have to look a little bit more at what is actually creating the pain response. There's research showing that an increase in sympathetic tone, fight-flight system, increase in sympathetic tone, and increase in stressors without coping mechanisms actually creates a greater risk of knee OA. We're seeing that a lifestyle in which you're not moving and what you're not fulfilled and what you're not purposeful is actually a greater risk for knee OA than running. So we ask the questions here. Is running bad for your knees? Updated framework shows us running is great for your knees, given, I'm going to add this point on there, given that it's done with graded exposure and progressive overload. Because if you're watching this and you're fired up and maybe you've given up running and you love running, like you love it. You love getting your shoes out. You love tying them up. You love going through a warm up. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It could be rainy, it could be snowing, it could be 90 degrees. You don't care. You love running, but you've given it up because you were told that it's bad for your joints, whether it's your hip or knee or whatever other joint you've been told, and you're fired up and you're ready to go. I would say, don't do that yet. And if you do it to a very, very short volume, because we have to build up for it. When we are running, you're taking on 8 to 10 times body weight load. If you haven't ran in years, you need to build up toleration to be able to go and do that activity. So graded exposure, a very specific program that's going to get you to that goal, is the way to do it.
We are here to empower you to get out of the nope, replace it with hope, and help you to reclaim your birthright of healthy and athletic.
In this video, we busted some myths, updated your education, showed you some of our favorite movements, external loading, but at best, that's only half the equation. The other half is internal load, how we adapt to it. We don't just specialize in movement, but how we actually adapt to it to become lifelong athletes.
We can't wait to coach you if you're interested, so head over to hopenotnope.org and we'll see you there.